Most coaches think the webinar presentation is where you teach and you give as much free value as possible. You put together a free training that walks your audience through the exact solution to their problems. And then at the end, you make a pitch, but that is the wrong mental model. And it's the reason why most coaches have low conversion rates on their webinars. A webinar that actually converts is not just a free training with the pitch at the end. It's a conversion mechanism that happens to include a training. Everything inside of it, every section, every teaching point, every story, every question is doing a specific job. When you understand what that structure is and why each piece works the way that it does, you stop tweaking the slides and you start building something that actually converts. In this video, I'm walking through the full structure of a $250K per month webinar presentation, section by section, what each section does, why it's there, and what breaks when it's built incorrectly. Let's get into it. A webinar presentation is structured into 4 sections: introduction, content, transition, and close. Most coaches running webinars have no structure at all. They show up, they introduce themselves, they teach, and then they make a pitch. What they don't realize is that every section is doing a specific job within the sales process. The order of these sections matter, and each section exists because of what the previous one created. The introduction comes first because a skeptical room won't pay attention to the training. You have to remove resistance and establish belief before the content can land. The content comes second because desire has to be built before you can identify the gap that makes the close feel necessary. The transition exists because desire alone does not guarantee closes. The close comes last because by the time you get to that section, the room has already been sold on the problem. The close just gives them a way to solve that specific problem. Before we go into each section, there is one concept that goes through all 4 of them, and it's the commitment ladder. The commitment ladder is a sequence of small agreements you're getting from the audience throughout the entire presentation before you ever ask them to buy. A small yes first, then another yes, and then finally you do the big ask. If you go straight to the big ask, most people will say no, but if you collected 20 small yeses before the offer or the pitch appears, the close feels like the logical next step. The introduction section has one purpose, and it's to get the room ready to buy before you have taught anything. Most coaches treat the introduction as a chance to thank everyone for showing up, explain what the webinar is about, maybe share a quick story about themselves, and then they move on to the training. That is not a real introduction. That is dead time at the start of the webinar. An introduction that converts does 4 things before the first teaching slide ever appears. First thing that it does is establish credibility. Prove that you have produced a specific result and can transfer that result to someone else. There's a difference between I've been in the industry for 10 years and I ran a business that did 2.5 million in a 12-month period. One of them tells the audience how long you've been around, and the other one tells the audience the results you've been able to get in the past. Specificity is what creates credibility. Second, it handles early objections. This is the piece that most coaches miss entirely. When someone is attending your webinar and considering your offer, they have objections. They've been burnt before, they're skeptical, they heard the promise you made in the title, and they already have a voice in their head telling them why it will not work for them specifically. If you don't address those objections before you start teaching, they sit in the audience with those objections alive while you're presenting. You're fighting a room full of quiet resistance and you don't even know about it. The introduction is where you name these objections out loud, early, before they grow. You're not closing them, you're not arguing with them, you're acknowledging them. Like for example, before we get into this, I know some of you are already thinking X. That one line disarms resistance more than anything else you can do in the first 10 minutes. Third, it sets the frame. What the audience believes before the presentation determines how they will receive everything inside of it. If they think they're watching a free training, they're gonna take notes and leave. If they understand they're looking at a system that could change the economics of their business, they will pay attention. The frame you set in the introduction is the lens that everything else gets filtered through. This is where you tell them what they're about to see, why it matters, what they should be looking at as you walk them through it. Fourth, it starts a commitment ladder. Small questions, small agreements. You're not teaching yet, but you're getting agreement. The content section is where the teaching happens, and this is the most misunderstood section in the entire presentation. The more valuable the content, the better the webinar converts, but that belief is wrong, and it's directly responsible for low conversion rates. The job of the content section is to build desire for what you sell. Every teaching step inside the content section follows a specific structure: concept, validation, case study, and summary. That is the structure that builds desire. Most coaches teach it in concepts only. They explain an idea, they move on to the next idea. No validation, no case study, no summary. And by the end of the content section, the audience has already heard a lot of ideas, but pretty much have felt nothing throughout the entire presentation. Here's what it looks like in practice. Say you're a coach teaching people how to build an online business. One of the teaching points is why most people fail before they ever make real money. The concept is most people fail not because the opportunity is wrong, but because they never built the right system underneath it. The validation is 80% of new businesses generate less than 1,000 in their first 6 months, not because the business model is bad, but because there's no repeatable process. The case study is one of the clients was making $8,000 a month, doing everything manually, no system, no process, just grinding. And then 6 months after we installed a proper acquisition and fulfillment system, they were at $34,000 a month. Then the summary is the business model was never the problem, the system underneath was. And every person in the room is now thinking, do I have that system? If they don't, the need for your solution just went up without you mentioning your offer even once. The second piece inside the content section is what I call persuasion foreplay. This is the process of building desire before you ever pitch. Every step should be seeding a specific feeling. The feeling that this works, that this is real, that this problem is solvable, and that without the right system, they're leaving a significant amount of money on the table. You're not pitching, you're not referencing your program, but by the end of the content section, the audience should be leaning forward. They should be thinking, if this is what the free content looks like, what does the full system and implementation look like? The question should be forming in their mind naturally before you ever ask them to buy. The third piece is what you teach. Teach the what, teach the why, and then sell the how. Tell them what needs to happen, tell them why it works the way that it does, but the step-by-step implementation, the specific sequence, the exact process that lives inside your coaching program is withheld. The goal is this: they need to understand the problem perfectly, they need to believe in the solution completely, and they need to know that they need your help in order to execute it correctly. So pretty much what you want to do is you want to teach the what, the why, but not the step-by-step implementation, because that's the part where they have to go to you specifically in order to solve that part of the problem, right? So you want to make them problem aware, make them solution aware, but the implementation is where they need help or guidance. And that's where your coaching program or your offer comes into play. Now let's talk about the transition. This is a section that most coaches don't know exists. Here's what most coaches do after the content section ends. They usually say something like this: so that's the framework. Now I want to share something with you that I put together that can help you with this. And then they go straight to the pitch. And that is what kills conversions. Not because the pitch is bad, not because the content was weak, but because the audience has not been moved into buying mode yet. The transition does three things specifically. First, it recaps the content. Not a full summary, but it's just going through the key points. We covered X, we covered Y, and Z. This recap does two things specifically. First, it makes the content easy to remember, and it collects final yeses from the audience before the close begins. Second is it identifies the gap. After the recap, you name the distance between where they are right now and where they want to be. Here's what you know now that you didn't know at the start of the webinar. Here's the gap between knowing it and having it built. That gap is what creates the reason to keep paying attention. Third, it delivers two choices. This is the most important moment in the entire transition. You give the audience exactly two options. Option number one, take everything you just learned and go build it yourself. Or option number two, work with someone who has already built it and can install it for you and save you a lot of time, money, and headache. And those are the two options that you give the audience. Just two options that the audience could take. What this does is frame the upcoming close as one of those two options. By the time you move into the close, the audience has already decided in their mind which direction they're leaning into. Then lastly, we have the close. Most coaches think the close as the part where they present the offer, one slide with the deliverables, a price, maybe a bonus or two. A close is actually a sequence of moves that takes someone from interested to committed. Here's how that sequence is built. First, the offer reveal. This is where you state what you sell and describe what it includes. But the way you describe each deliverable matters more than what you include. Every component inside your offer should be connected to a specific problem. It's not just you get 12 modules. Instead, what you want to do is you want to say you get the exact framework we walked through earlier, ready to implement inside your business. This is what clients are using to go from inconsistent income to $10,000 or $30,000 per month. Every deliverable is a solution to a specific problem you named previously. If a deliverable doesn't match a problem the audience recognizes during the content section, it's not going to land the same way. Second, you want to do price and anchoring. Before you name the price, you want to anchor it. The cost of the problem, the value of the result, the time and money it would take for them to build it themselves. Now let's look at this specific scenario. If your business is doing $40,000 a month and the average client who goes through the program adds an additional 20 to 30% in revenue, you are looking at an $8,000 to $12,000 in monthly additional revenue when the investment is only $5,000. Now that you named the price compared to what they can get in return for investing this certain amount, it makes complete sense in their mind. And now they can see, okay, it's going to cost me this specific amount of money, but it's worth it because I'm going to get X, Y, Z. Third is the bonuses. Bonuses are not a list of extras. Each bonus should address a specific objection you know the audience has. If you know people worry about implementation one bonus should handle implementation. Fourth is the guarantee. A guarantee's job is to remove risk. The stronger and more specific your guarantee, the better it works. A 30-day money-back guarantee is good, but everyone has one. A guarantee tied to specific outcome is different. If you go through the program, implement the system, and you do not hit the results that you wanted to hit, we will work with you at no additional cost until you reach your desired result. That is a guarantee that has a specific objection, which is the risk objection. They're not sure if it's going to work or they're going to get the result that they want. Fifth is objection handling. They have commitment objections: timing, budget, I need to think about it. You name these out loud in the close and you handle them one by one. For example, the timing objection: every week that you run without the system is time that will never come back. And then the budget objection is: what does staying where you are cost you every month? The cost of staying there is growing the longer you wait. Next, we have the I need to think about it objection. What specifically are you thinking about? If it's whether this actually works, we covered that on the last hour. If it's whether it actually works for your specific situation, that is exactly what the call is for. Sixth is scarcity and urgency. And it's not fake scarcity. It's a real reason why acting now is better than acting later. False urgency gets ignored and damages trust. Real urgency is what moves people who are on the fence. I can only take a specific amount of clients and half the spots were already filled. That is real scarcity. It's specific, it's verifiable, and it creates a reason to act now without manufacturing a fake deadline. Now, let's talk about the commitment ladder. The commitment ladder is a sequence of yeses that build across 4 sections. It starts in the introduction. It runs through the content section, every case study, every teaching point, and the transition with the recap. And by the time you reach the close, the audience has already said yes dozens of times. This is why some webinars feel like the audience just buys. The room is warm by the time the offer appears, and the ones that do not convert have a solid presentation and no commitment ladder, so the offer lands cold. If the only yes in the entire presentation is yes, I want to buy, you skip the whole ladder. Here's what you should do if you want to build a good commitment ladder. Go back through your presentation and mark every point where the audience gives agreement. If you have fewer than 10 before the close starts, the commitment ladder isn't properly built, and you need to be asking more questions like, hey, have you ever been in this situation? Does this sound familiar? Does the system make sense? Do you see how you can, get the desired outcome after I've gone over this webinar? And what you're trying to do is get as many yeses as possible. So by the time you do that pitch, would you be interested in, a system that can help you get faster results? That's going to be, a no-brainer for them. It's going to be easier for them to say yes after they've agreed with you and said yes to you a bunch of times throughout the presentation. If your webinar is not converting as good as it should, the problem is most likely the webinar presentation structure. Either the introduction is not doing its job, the content is teaching too much or too little, or the transition does not exist and you're going straight from teaching to pitching, or there's problems with your close that are limiting your conversion rate. If you're already doing $30,000 a month and want to get more out of your webinar that you're already running, this is exactly what we fix. We identify which sections are broken and install what is missing. The link to book a call is in the description below. Now, one thing that I want to say is that if you want my help installing this specific webinar structure into your own webinar funnel and to scale your coaching and info business with this, strategy that I covered in this video, then go ahead and book a call in the description below. I can only take on a certain amount of clients every month because, building out these webinar funnels and having the perfect structure, having the pre-webinar system and the post-webinar system in place, along with the entire webinar structure covered in this specific video, it takes a lot of time and requires a lot of attention to the detail in order to make sure that it fits your specific ICP, your niche, your market, and the audience that you're looking to convert. So I can only work with a specific amount of coaches every single month. Even though I have, AI, even though I have virtual assistants helping me, build out this entire thing for you, I have a limit to how many coaches I can work with every single month. So if you're interested in working with me and talking about potentially installing this into your coaching business, make sure that you book a call with the link below and we can talk more.